women's sports media will create some of the biggest creators in sports business and a new path for women's college athletes to pursue beyond the game. Today, we're talking to someone who is well on her way. Logan Hackett, otherwise known as SportsWithLogs, has grown an audience to over 100,000 plus on TikTok, where she covers all aspects of women's sports. Since getting her start in 2021, she has also partnered with women's sports media brands, leagues, and is a part of ESPN's first creator class. But as you'll hear, this is all a start for the big vision ahead of how she can expand on her success with TikTok into creating a platform for herself in women's sports.
Expanding onto more platforms, so definitely Instagram is what I'm trying to. And then like YouTube, and hopefully having a podcast and like maybe my own show.
And in this episode, you will learn how Logan built her content strategy to cover the women's sports industry, what she has had to learn in order to pursue content creation full-time, from pricing to partnerships and process, and how she thinks about building on her success with TikTok to expand across other platforms. Welcome back to New Game Labs, where we help creators in sports level up in business. It's your host, Kirby Porter. I love to hear your thoughts as you're listening. You can leave us a comment here on YouTube. Now let's talk with our guest. We kick off our conversation with how she got her start.
Getting started, I actually had a different TikTok page and I talked about literally everything under the sun, but it kind of bothered me because like there was no purpose behind it. I was just doing it like for funsies and happened to like gain followers. And it was when TikTok like was first starting to get big, so it was a lot easier. And then I got like shadow banned and then banned at one point for like no reason. And I think I just hit 200K. And I was like, okay, like my time is done. That was fun, whatever, like let's move on. And I think it only took like a week and a half. And I was like, wait, I'm bored. Like I love content creation. So I made a new page and I started with those fit checks that you saw. I think I remember deleting or like privating a few, but there's probably a lot there. And I think somebody might have commented like you should do WNBA fits. And so I did that first and that got pretty big. And then I did NWSL ones, same thing. And then I was sitting there like, wait, first of all, I didn't even know that the fit checks went this hard. Second of all, I didn't even know like they were in season. And I grew up as a female athlete. Like I've been a female athlete my whole life. So that really made me like step back and be like, whoa, let me like see what's in the media about women's sports, how accessible it is. Let me read up on it. And that's when I noticed like there's few and far between. Even like there's just women's sports and I guess like ESPN, those are the big ones. But it was so hard just to find stuff about women's sports. And so I decided to talk about it.
I love that because it's like, I feel like that's what being a creative or entrepreneur is. It's like identifying a gap or like a problem in the market and being like, you know what, I can do that. Like I can add something here and share my voice. And you've done that. What was it like when you like started researching, found the gap? What did you decide you would focus on content-wise? Did you see a lane to do like the off the court stuff? Did you want to do a blend? How did you evolve from that moment?
Yeah, so I think it was like a Sunday, and I like almost studied WNBA and NWSL because I saw there were like a lot of people interacting with the videos, some of them fans, but other people like just wanting to know more. And so I figured that if I'm going to talk about it, I also kind of need to know my stuff as well and at least pretend like I know. And at that point, I knew nothing. And so, yeah, I would just like try to find the most prevalent story wherever. I'd like go on Twitter and just search up like NWSL, go on Reddit into the thread and like see what people are talking about and then try to make content around it somehow. But I think I've always used the green screen. That's my favorite thing.
I love the green screen. Like you own that. I'm like, and like you also like zoom out too. So I'm like, this is her style. Yeah. And that's interesting too, just on the point of like research that goes into this, especially if you're doing, I guess, recent event-based type of content, like really getting into like where people are talking about it, what's relevant, and just what the culture is around the sport. I feel like that's key. How did you then take that content strategy and figure out the platform? It sounds like, you know, before when you were just doing it for fun, like you kind of got the hang of TikTok, but I think now it's something that people are like looking for expertise on. Like, how do I grow on this platform? What were the things that you did when you doubled down on women's sports that you think worked really well?
I think consistency for sure was key, but also like making it known that I was going to be the place for women's sports. Because at the time, there was nobody who came across my For You page who also spoke about women's sports, or spoke about it on a regular basis. So like with everything going on. And so I really wanted to make sure that I was not only delivering like content about women's sports, but also niche content. So if somebody, I don't know, like softball, then there's something for them, or gymnastics. Like I really wanted to touch on everything, and just like make everything well rounded. I wanted to be like the go-to place. And another strategy behind that was incorporating different types of, I guess, content that would be consumed or attractive to other people. So if you're not a women's sports fan, let's say you only watch men's sports, you can even hate on women's sports, but you want to hear about like a story, then you'd still be interested in it, and that might lead you to something else.
Definitely. And what did you think, like, when you were building that initial audience, did you notice trends in like who you were attracting, who was really gravitating towards it when you were early on?
There was definitely like the die-hard women's sports fans, and they still interact a lot with my videos. Like I know if I'm going to make a video about WNBA, there's going to be a good amount of people who like know exactly what's going on and like all the background behind it and can provide their input. I don't know, because I kind of really got started like with the Olympics, the Summer Olympics, and then it's like slowly transitioned, but definitely more women than men. And it's kind of just like been evolving differently, but I didn't really have like a target audience.
Yeah.
I just wanted to like put everything out there.
From there at the time, are you thinking like this is something I can pursue business wise or full time after college, or are you just having fun with it? What did you think when you started to get a lot of early traction with the page?
I went through like a whole roller coaster, but I vividly remember like in the summer, I think it was just after the Olympics, I was thinking to myself, like, maybe I do go hard with this and like try to see what I could do with it. But I didn't know how I'd be able to like turn it into, I guess, a business or like a full-time job. And I remember like 3 vivid conversations, and it was with my mom, my dad, and my best friend. And none of them really seemed to like be able to get behind the concept. I think I was really like dreaming big at that point too. And I remember saying to my dad, like, imagine if I like just became like something in sports, like that would be cool. He's like, yeah, that would be cool, but like you probably have to go to school for it, whatever. And then I nannied. So I was like, I've been nannying families. And through that, I don't know, I still kind of wasn't thinking that I could turn it into full time. I actually applied to a sports journalism school and I got in. And then I think it was like the day after the admissions letter came, I guess in the winter, this last winter, oh my gosh, like December of 2021, December 2021. I was like, wait, I don't know if I'm going to have to like go to this school. So it was all like an up and down. And it wasn't until going into the summer when the family that I was nannying was moving to Chicago. So I was left without a job. And I was like, wait, like what if I just try? I think I got a pretty good brand deal at that point as well. And so I just kind of gave it my all. Like I turned full time without really having a concept of how I was going to like bring in any money or like turn it into a business. And then throughout the past like 3 months-ish, I've really just been grinding on it, and now it's my full-time job.
I'm so happy to hear this. We're going to get into all of that. And I think it's an interesting point here too around the different ways to get into sports now, or to create whatever big reality vision you have for yourself into reality is through content creation. Like before, it's this very set, niche, clear path that isn't as accessible or only a few can do. And now it's like, if you want to be something, it sounds so corny, but create it. Like put your ideas out there, act on it, follow through, and you can really carve your own lane in the industry through content, which is what you're doing. And I'd love to hear like when you were thinking big and like having those big visions about where you could take what you were doing on TikTok, what were those things? Like how big did you think that you could bring your passion for women's sports?
I still have like I'm now like trying to work more towards them, but this was like, I think I had 60K at that point, just finished the Olympics. So I was also losing followers because a lot of people only followed me for the Olympics. I was thinking like big production podcasts, like the ones that you who has a big podcast? I don't know. The ones that you watch, like
all
they're
the
all in like a
smoke.
studio. Yeah, they like have a studio and like they bring people in, a whole setup, everything. So I was thinking that, which I live in Toronto, so that wouldn't work because I feel like everybody lives in the States. I was thinking a show where like I'll go around with like different athletes and play sports. I had no connections to athletes at that point. Traveling around the world to do like women's sports stuff, no way to do that. Like those are all like my big dreams, I guess, and what I was using to kind of like drive it. Also like being on TV, doing TV stuff, which you kind of do. I feel like I would need a little bit more time in the industry. But just like popping into it after like 2 months of content creation wasn't really the vibe. But yeah, I was dreaming big.
Big, and that's what we do. And it's like funny hearing you say that. It's like it's probably sounded so far off back then, but since we met at W All Star, like I've watched you like be able to do some of these things that you're listing off. And I'd love to hear more about how you went from I don't know how to turn this into a business to now doing it as a business. Were those first brand deals signs that like, okay, there's a path to revenue? Did you see other creators that were doing it that inspired the thought that you could pursue it in a work capacity? Can you talk to us about that?
It wasn't really, I haven't like seen anybody else do like this type of thing. And there was a few brand deals, but it wasn't enough for me to be like, okay, like I can live off of this. It's just like, oh, that's nice. But it was definitely about like getting everything in order. Like there's so much stuff, probably like 80% of my day sometimes is spent on like behind the scenes stuff rather than like actual standing in front of my tripod and making a video. So it was like getting all that down and also like just becoming organized, because I think a lot of people don't realize like there's so much more than just the videos that we're putting out. And we're like working so much so hard on things like everywhere as well. Like compartmentalization in my brain is insane because there's different things in different areas. And then it was also about shifting my content in a different way and creating with a different, I want to say, intent on some of my videos. So still staying true to women's sports, but being able to deliver stories in a way that it would pop up on anybody's For You page. And I guess like the drama or like gossipy stories, or just like being able to find things about women's sports in other stories that are going big. So let's say like the World Cup is on, everything with Iran, then I can shift my focus and my content to Iran to be able to educate people on that, but also still have it relating back to women's sports. Or any other like big, especially political things. I like providing like another perspective and being like, oh, this is happening here too. So definitely creating for everybody has been like my main focus. Still trying to stay true to like the niche side of things, but definitely trying to create more for more people.
Absolutely. I think that's an evolution a lot of creators go through, especially when they start niche. They have to think, what is the next level? And a big part of it is like, how do you connect your niche or your focus or your audience to like broader culture or broader industry, broader society? And it's like cool to hear. I can also see how you've been able to do that. And it helps you like build trust too, like as a resource for all things women's sports, not just things that are like only the people within our hyper engaged culture know, like people that a lot of like everyone can relate to. And I think that helps bring more people into the space too. And you mentioned a part earlier about the behind the scenes work and how that's actually a big part of being a creator. Would you be able to break down like high level, what are those things for people that are maybe new to it or don't know what goes into the TikTok creation process? Because I think a lot of creators need to take a full view of like, if you're going to pursue it business wise, it's helpful to think about how can you reallocate your time to not just 100% content. It has to be content and also operations. So what did that look like for you?
So my first thing is emails for sure. I hate answering emails, but I get so many emails a day. Oh my goodness. So it's like making sure I stay on top of that. And then also figuring things out in different places. So let's say like content banks. So right now there's like volleyball, soccer, and basketball going on in college. So finding like the stories in that, what's going on, what games are coming up, player lines, things like to watch out for that might be stories coming up. Or I'm going to Australia for like 3 months. So figuring out what leagues are there, what brands are there. Brand is another one, but I'll touch on that in a sec. And like just everything going on there. And back to brands, it's trying to find brands that I want to work with or something that would align with me. I love to really just like look at that and find like ways that like could potentially partner or things that they're doing that are working as well. I don't steal their content, but if they're like delivering things in a certain way, I really like to see that and like researching what's going on pretty much, and what like the general fan atmosphere is. I really like to read on women's sports fans and like what's going on in the industry, and how fans are reacting to things and what they're thinking about certain situations. And I really think that actually helps my content in the long run, because I stay unbiased in most of the things that I do. But the general tone that I feel like I'm going to get, or the way that I can like word things to deliver it, I really like to study that. It's really fun, actually.
I love that. It definitely probably helps you keep a holistic view too and like pulse on the industry and helps you be well versed across like various topics. And on the point too of brands, I think when people think about brand deals, it's like maybe a bit transactional. Like, how can I get this brand to pay me for this and like move on? But you put a lot of thought into your brand partnership strategy, not just like one time endorsement deals. Maybe let's dive into that a little bit more. Like, do you search brands that are in women's sports specifically, or brands that are wanting to get into women's sports? And then once you identify someone, what's your process of, I guess, starting to work with them? Is it, hey, I can create this content for you on my channel, or hey, let's collaborate on this event? How has that brand partnership journey been for you this year?
So definitely like my big thing is brands that are working with women's sports and even like giving deals to female athletes or NIL deals. That's like kind of at the top. And then after that, I'll look at advertising in women's sports. Example, Australia. I really want to work with the Australian Open. It's been like a big dream of mine. And so I have like the list of brands that work with women's sports and like that are tennis sports, but then also looking at like advertisements and if there's like a woman focused brand or just like a brand that I would kind of align with, like seeing what they're doing and if I could potentially partner with them. But I also like to come up with ideas for partnerships. Green screen is kind of my thing. We were talking about that before. And my past partnerships, they've liked me to use that as well because it's like natural and I guess like you're expecting to see green screen. But I'm really trying to change the focus, or I guess like the content side of things, to being more of like a production. Because sitting on a green screen talking about a brand, it feels way too addy. And it's not really natural at all. Like I can make natural content, but it's a little bit hard when it's only focusing on this brand. So really trying to get into like, how can I make an ad or be able to partner with a brand, but also make the content like attractive to other people, make it something that they want to watch. And in that sense, like it's literally like a three-way win. Like everybody wins in that case. So I really like to figure those out.
I think that's something that you have done really well looking at your content. And I think what this new style of like TikTok creators have done really well, that ads don't feel like ads. Like there's sometimes where I'll watch a full TikTok and I will not even realize that it was an ad because it's more organic, it's more storytelling. And I think what the platform does, it kind of takes away all like the high production stuff in general. And it's just like person to person, like you're FaceTiming someone. And so it's cool to think about like, yes, I want to do that for myself, but also that's a huge value add to my brand partners too. So it's cool to hear how you've implemented that. And like you've worked with a lot of cool brands this year. I obviously have my list. So you worked with JWS on the Winter Olympics. And then you did W All-Star, NWSL. You were selected to ESPN's like first creator class. And like, this is just a few. I know there is a lot more that you've done in this past year. Can you talk to us about like, what is the journey from doing this like as a passion idea to starting to work with big brands? What was that evolution for you like, I guess, and your like maturity as a creator? Were you nervous going into these deals? Would love to hear how that evolution has been for you.
Yeah, it's been crazy. Excuse me. I remember JWS when they reached out to me. It was at like the very start. I want to say either before the end or just after the Summer Olympics ended. And that was like my big kind of like first push. I was covering everything. It was crazy. But I remember being so excited about it and being like, whoa, oh my gosh, like they want me for this. And they reached out in August for the upcoming Olympics, which would be in February. So it was really exciting, like to look forward to. And I was nervous because I don't know, I want to like do my best work. And those weren't ads either. Like I was posting on their page. So I wanted to make sure everything was perfect. And even with my work, like I'm a perfectionist. Like I film on TikTok and let's say the video is like a minute 30. It'll probably take me like an hour and a half to edit it and then watch it over like 10 times. So I was really scared because I just wanted to make sure everything was perfect. But after that, like as everything kept on coming in, it's like every single time I get an email, I just like freak out because I can't even believe that like I've been able to work with these brands. Even WNBA for the All-Star weekend, I was like in shock that I was even able to do that. But I think it's really cool. Because I haven't personally like seen anybody kind of like have the same type of journey to be able to do this stuff. Um, but yeah, every single time I get an email to do a brand deal, I'm mainly like shocked, but also excited.
Honestly, it is kind of like, oh, you me? Like me, little me to work with you. But I feel like it'll be normalized for you over time as you just continue to do these things. Do you have any tips for content creators listening to this right now that are like about to enter their first big brand deal? Like, would you give them any wisdom from your experience?
Know your worth 100%. I know it's really hard. Like I struggled with it. I just got a management team and they're amazing, but I really struggled with being able to tell companies like, hey, this is what I want to charge for what you're asking me to do. But you have to know your worth. Do not undercharge. And somebody told me, I think what you think you should be charging them, charge like 5 times more than that, and that's probably a good rate. Um, but there's like a good amount of money put behind these things. So make sure you know your worth and make sure you also align with the company that you're working with. That's like a big one that you want to make sure that your audience aligns with them going into things.
Absolutely. That is such a hurdle for so many creators, but I think a lot of us do have to like put on our business hat, right? Especially if we're pursuing this as entrepreneurs. It's like we have to bounce the, well, I want to help everyone and like just create, but we also have to value our work. And it's something that like I've struggled with as well. Like I always get nervous, like putting a rate out there or sharing my price or like even asking my audience to buy something from me. Like that always just makes me nervous. But I think especially as more creators are becoming founders, it's like we have to just accept it as a part of like the journey, right? So I love that piece of advice. So we talked about this next part a little bit earlier around what is it like to be a content creator. You have talked a lot about process. You talked a lot about the behind the scenes, how you're operating your content. I'd love to understand like what are the main differences that you see now between creating content as a hobby versus doing it full time?
Ooh, definitely the research that goes into everything. My videos kind of tend to be on the longer side, but now I'm trying to make sure like every single bit of information is in it, whether I'm saying it or it's like text on screen even, and really fact checking myself. Beforehand, like I obviously try to get my facts straight, but I feel like because I have a bigger audience and I'm on a bigger scale, more people are coming to me to look for things. And if I get something wrong, then I'm the one who told people this, especially on TikTok. Like I could post a video thinking it's not going to get a lot of views and it ends up having like, let's say 5 million and then everybody has wrong information. So definitely that part of it. And then just like the intent and what I want to deliver while talking about things. So in the past, if I were to talk about, I don't know, some story, I'd give it like at face value, and just like this team won and it was like their sixth win or whatever. But now I like to go into detail and be like, this team won. It was their sixth win in this many games. This is the first time that this has happened, and really also give players, coaches, whoever I'm talking about, their credit and kind of a little backstory, or a deeper look into like who they are, and why everything is like so amazing. So definitely like intent. I just want to make sure that everybody is like recognized and appreciated. And I feel like before I definitely could have done a lot better at that.
Absolutely. And I think a big piece too is the preparation when you kind of move from doing it when you feel like it to doing it with a hat of like, I'm aiming to grow and operate and scale this to whatever level I believe that this can be. And I think that's something really important to keep in mind for people that are thinking about turning it up a notch on content, especially as we're heading into this new year. And the other piece of this is like, how have you thought about scaling yourself as you think back to your big goals that you're manifesting and checking off now and what's ahead? You have a management team, but how do you think about like leveling up as a creator? What does that look like for you? Is it expanding into new channels? Is it trying different monetization strategies? What is your thought process behind that as you're entering the new year?
So I have like a huge list of everything right now that I want to either like get better at or start working to like level up. One of them is definitely like more putting out more videos and different styles. So I want to create those type of videos where it's like with a camera and then you have to like go and edit it afterwards, but like there's stuff like going through the screen and then like the videos coming up. I really want to do that type of content, and I think it would be amazing for like storytelling. I was gonna try to like up my content, but I've been traveling for like a month, so that's kind of gone down the drain. But also expanding into onto more platforms. So definitely Instagram is what I'm trying to do, and do reels. I don't know why something's like holding me back from doing that. I just need to do it. And then like YouTube, and hopefully having a podcast and like maybe my own show, but definitely being able to have platforms on like all of the different social medias and be able to like grow those rather than just TikTok. Especially because like when I say I'm a content creator, people, I don't know, they don't really expect TikTok first, or like they'll go to my Instagram and be like, oh, but you only have like this many followers. And I'm like, hey, yeah, I don't post on Instagram yet. So I want to be able, I want to be found, make sure like I could be found in the different places.
That is such an interesting point on like discoverability and also expansion. I think a lot of great creators definitely do start with one platform and just like getting really good at it, because then it makes it easier to expand into other platforms. You can carry your audience, but it's just something to keep in mind and like have a forward looking view on it of when you will plan to do these things and not be reactive. And it's something I think about too. Like I personally spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, and when I tell people I'm working the creator economy, they look at my TikTok. I don't post on TikTok. I use TikTok for fun. But like heading into this year, I'm like, I am getting for real about TikTok, because yeah, people look at it, they're like, are you sure? So yeah, like diversifying your presence, making sure that it's consistent if you're really pursuing it. But also I'll say we should not spread ourselves too thin. It's something I've done before for sure. So I appreciate that. And let's get into our last section, which is like advice, rapid fire, younger notes to self across like key points of your journey, basically. What advice would you give to yourself, knowing what you know now, when you were starting on TikTok?
Oh my gosh. I don't even know, because I feel like every day I'm like learning different things, but it would definitely, first of all, do not like listen to the or ignore the hate, I guess. Like when I first started making videos and I would like get women's sports hate or just like hate in general, it really, really bothered me, and like I'd be down about it. And now like I'm not gonna lie, the other day I posted a video to get hate. Like I know that's so bad to say.
You're like, come
But
at me.
yeah, literally. And I knew exactly what was going to happen, and I was right about it. And I think it's like, it's at like 1.6 million right now. I know how to like light people's fire, and now I enjoy doing that. So definitely like don't worry about any of that stuff. And then also like take it easy because I definitely came out of the gates hard, like especially with the Olympics. I was posting about every single event that a woman was in. And then after that, I felt like I kind of had to keep it up until the Winter Olympics where I decided to do the same thing. And definitely like throughout this summer and I guess like spring when everything kind of like really started moving well or popping off, I guess, it was always like, okay, I need to create like 2 to 3 videos a day. I need to always like be commenting, liking other things. Like I was really trying to do everything. And although it like, I wouldn't really say it affected my mental health, but it was just like, I was so busy and it was like the only thing that I was doing. But now I'm kind of starting to appreciate more like, okay, I can go a day without posting on TikTok and I'm not going to lose followers. Women's sports world isn't going to crash down. Like it's going to be fine. And so it's definitely just to like pace yourself.
100%. Oh my gosh. I think something to remind ourselves is like we determine what consistency looks like to us. And so there's always going to be best practices of how many times you should post and do this and do that. But really, we know what works best for us, our mental health, and our audience, and to be able to manage our content and all the opportunities that come with it too. I think, you know, as you start to get opportunities from your content, I remember there were some times where I was spending so much time on the content, I wasn't able to capitalize on the opportunities. And I'm like, how can I rebound? So I totally agree that just taking it easy and doing what you can commit to is so important. And the second thing I'd love to hear from you is what advice would you give to yourself when you got your first brand deal? I know we talked about this earlier, so maybe if you have advice on pricing more specifically and like how you got confident or did the math to figure out yours. You don't have to share your rate, but like how you landed at your first brand deal.
I think, honestly, I think my first like 2 or 3, they're like, we want to give you this. And I was like, okay, sure, do it. But now looking back at like my first big brand or yeah, I guess first big brand deal or my first one in general, oh my gosh, I'm like in awe of how little I charged for how much that they wanted. And now like I charge way more like for one video than the amount that they wanted. But at that time I also didn't really know what I should be charging. And I was like using calculators like online or whatever and like trying to see what other people were doing. But it's really hard because everything is different. Everybody uses like a different rate or a different like system to figure out their pricing. So my advice would definitely be to like upcharge because my base or like what I was giving to brands was way less than I think I would even like value myself as. And just like, I don't know, be confident because at the end of the day, this brand is coming to you and they want to use you to promote their company and to get into a women's sports space or reach your audience, which is for women's sports. So give them what you think they deserve.
Absolutely. I think the part of like determine your formula, because there's a lot of just templates. If you have X amount of followers, you should charge this much, but it leaves out all the qualitative stuff like your experience as a women's athlete, your experience in creating great content. Like that's content that the brands can use on their channels, your storytelling ability, just all the intangibles that like make your value, like that has to be added into the mix, not just like how many organic views you get or how many followers you have. So I encourage everyone to listen to what Logan just said and create your own formula for how you are pricing your deals. So that wraps up our conversation. Thank you so much. I'm like so pumped for the future of women's sports. I think creators are going to dominate next year, the year after, and after that. And I'm excited to see you check off more to-dos on your, big dream list as a women's sports creator. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Oh my goodness. I love like the whole concept of this whole podcast and really being able to like just touch other people and give a side that like you honestly wouldn't even know unless you spoke to another content creator. Because there's so much information that like we have or advice or just like stories and nobody really hears it. And it's really hard to like get that information. So I really appreciate this.
Thank you. That made my day. Awesome.